1939. A railway station in Tamil Nadu. An 8-year-old boy spends his mornings running across these platforms selling newspapers to strangers, just to scrape together enough money for school the next day. These same hands would eventually develop India's most powerful missiles. One day, this boy would command the same air force that once told him he wasn't good enough to join. He grew up in a household in Rameswaram, where luxury didn't exist, but generosity did. His mother was known for feeding the neighborhood before she ever sat down to eat herself. While he worked to support his family, his attention was usually fixed on the sky. He spent hours watching birds fly over the coast, deciding that he would eventually find a way to join them. He followed that curiosity through years of college, specializing in physics and aerospace engineering with one goal in mind: a career in military aviation. He cleared every training round and academic test required by the Indian Air Force. But when the final list was posted, there were only 8 spots available. He was ranked 9th. Missing his life's dream by a single rank left him devastated. He traveled to the banks of the Ganges, sitting alone to figure out what happens to a pilot who is never allowed to leave the ground. This rejection forced him to shift his focus. If he couldn't fly the planes, he would spend the rest of his life building the technology that would define the skies instead. He joined the Indian Space Research Organization, taking charge of the SLV-3, the project intended to launch India's first satellite. The first attempt was a disaster. Years of work and millions in investment plummeted into the Bay of Bengal in a matter of seconds. In the middle of the following media storm, he stood up and took total responsibility. He went back to the control room and told his team they were rebuilding immediately. By July 1980, they were back on the pad. This time, the rocket performed perfectly, placing the Rohini satellite into its intended orbit. The man who had been rejected by the Air Force had just successfully led his country into space. The achievement brought immediate international pressure. Western nations placed strict sanctions on India, cutting off access to the very defense technology the country needed to protect its borders. He responded by pushing for total technological autonomy. He believed that if the world refused to help India, then India would simply have to build every component, system, and missile itself. This led to the birth of the Agni missile program, a massive, heavily armored, mobile deterrent built entirely with Indian resources. He followed this with the Prithvi, Akash, and Nag missiles. Countries that initially mocked India's capabilities were now forced to watch its growing arsenal with caution. The very sanctions intended to limit India's power had instead forced the country to develop a defense industry that was completely unshakable. In 1998, he took on his most high-stakes mission yet, a series of nuclear tests conducted in absolute secrecy to avoid international intervention. To hide from CIA satellites, the team worked in the middle of the night. Scientists moved across the Pokhran Desert in military disguises, communicating only in code while moving heavy equipment under darkness. On May 11th, the desert floor buckled. The tests were successful, and the global power dynamic shifted in an instant. While world leaders scrambled to react to the news, the former newspaper boy from Rameswaram remained the calmest man in the room. In 2002, his career reached its final peak when he was elected President of India. This meant he was now the Supreme Commander of the Indian Air Force, the very organization that had told him he was one rank short of being useful decades earlier. Despite his rank, he lived simply. He preferred the company of students over politicians, often spending his evenings asking young people about their own ambitions. He died on stage at IIM Shillong in 2015, in the middle of a lecture. He spent his final moments doing exactly what he had done his entire life: encouraging others to look toward the sky. His journey suggests that a door closing in your face is often a signal pointing you toward a better path. He frequently reminded his students that a true dream is something so persistent that it prevents you from sleeping at all. If you are currently facing a setback, treat it as the blueprint for your own self-reliance. Your greatest contribution might be waiting on the other side of your biggest failure.